If you're currently studying Greek mythology, you might ponder upon a question. Why were ancient Greek people so nice to their neighbors and strangers? Even if they didn't know them, they still enthusiastically, generously served their guests nonetheless. Very different from nowadays. If we don't feel comfortable having someone or any stranger over, we can kindly ask them to leave. No big deal, right? However, it is not the case for ancient Greek religion. More seriously, not practicing the rule of Xenia, which is a Greek term for hospitality, might have severe consequences, which can be examined through Homer's writings. By this lesson, people will have a better understanding to why it is almost an implicit obligation for a host to treat his guests well and vice versa, and what is considered respectful and acceptable in ancient Greek religion. Hospitality was not just a kindness, it was an unspoken, deeply embedded cultural law to preserve order for people in an attempt to maintain order and civility between Greeks with various regions. Thus, Xenia described the virtue, or courtesy, to strangers. It created a genial, respectful relationship between host and guest, with both having his own duty and precepts. The host was expected to welcome the stranger, bathe him, invite a seat at the table, and offer entertainment like food, drink, or music. Only after all the needs were taken care of, the host could question, "Who are you? Whence have you come? And what is the purpose of your journey?" Then, the guest was given a place to sleep. In return, the guest was also expected to be polite and to abstain from making inconvenient requests. The notion was so sacred that the Greeks envisioned that Zeus, the king of gods, was responsible to look over it. For the same reason, it was believed that any god can be disguised as stranger, checking up on mortals. Therefore, the notion might have originated from the fear of the gods, as homes of those other inhabitants who denied them Xenia sank into a swamp where their owners perished. Once the Xenia is broken, the consequences are petrifying, followed by a sad chain of inevitable sorrow, corruption, and death. Oof. If you recall, the most famous Greek war of all time, the Trojan War, is actually started because of a violation to Xenia. The invited guest, Paris of Troy, steals away the Princess Helen, which abuses his host Melane's trust and violates the Xenia rule. Thus, the conflict sparked a 10-year bloody murderous war and full of death. This evidence suggests everything that would go wrong for disobeying Xenia: agonization and death. In addition, in the Odyssey by Homer, it is about the journey home of Odysseus, who just fought for 10 years for the Greek side in the Trojan War, and he's heading back home to Ithaca. Here, he encounters many different hospitality hosts and guests, good and bad. The book emphasized the importance of Xenia from the very beginning. It starts with the suitors, thinking Odysseus is dead, who invade his home, eat his food, drink his wine, and pursue Penelope, the wife, into marrying them. This shows the suitors are bad guests, but Penelope is bound by the law of Xenia, cannot refuse, and still must be a good host. So she weaves a shroud in the morning only to unweave it at night, so she doesn't have to marry to any of the suitors. As the Xenia law plays out, Penelope reunites with her husband and lives happily, while the suitors are all killed by Odysseus per Zeus' punishment to avenge bad Xenia. Further, Telemachus, Odysseus' son, also proves himself to be a good host. The Olympian gods have taken interest in the event, so Athena in disguise arrives at their doorstep for the challenge. Telemachus invites the stranger in, offers a place to stay and rest, and even gives Athena a guest gift present, saying, "Good evening, stranger, and welcome. Be our guest. Come share dinner and then tell us what you need." He doesn't ask who the stranger is, and his hospitality helps him to find information of his father's whereabouts later in the story by the guidance of the same god Athena. These evidence suggests one could receive something in return for being a good host, God's favor, for example. Odysseus himself, on his journey back home, also experiences an extremely bad host. Although Odysseus becomes a bad guest only in response to the situation, both the host and guest undergo serious consequences for violating the Xenia. In one instance, Odysseus encountered the Cyclopes, the uncivilized one-eyed giant whose father is Poseidon, living in cave. First, they really ask who the stranger is, before serving them, which can only be asked afterwards. The monster is like,
"Who are you? What's your name?
Not only that, the Cyclopes are bad hosts. They trap Odysseus and the crews in a cave with a giant rock, and also cutting the crewmates up piecemeal and made ready his supper. Out of anger, Odysseus got the Cyclopes all wasted and blinded Polyphemus, one of the monsters, having all the crew safely escape the cave. And so do you think Poseidon would just get someone go away who just blinded his son? Of course not. Poseidon cursed the voyage to be miserable. One can see that for violating the Xenia law, the Cyclops have to pay with his eye, and Odysseus have to pay with the death of his crewmates and a tedious long journey home, which is supposed to only take 3 weeks instead of 10 years. Understanding hospitality could help us understand the ancient world better by knowing what their beliefs abide by and originate from. Thus, it could help explain the reason for their actions, decisions, customs, and even conflicts. In general, relating human experience, hospitality is so relevant that it can be seen on a daily basis. Hospitality can tell us more about who we are as a society and what our core values are. It implies warmth, respect, and protection. It builds love, relationship, and appreciation among nations. Without Xenia, everyone would have to abide by jungle laws that could be crazy, just full of plundering and scattering. Homer has well crafted this notion into his writings that truly reflected the ancient Greek. To the Greeks, the notion of Xenia was so sacred that they think it's what set Greek apart. Xenia might be an important factor to help Greek achieve democracy, civilization, and getting out of barbarism, as Homer represents the idea of barbaric and uncivilizedness with the Cyclopes, and even they are still expected to follow Xenia. And so that's why Xenia is so important to the Greek, and it can be possible that this notion helped the Greeks to become one of the most powerful force in the ancient world. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.